Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, 48-year career nursing professional, chief nursing officer, and past president of the Association of Leadership Science in Nursing, Dr. Angela Prestia. Hey, what you drinking? The benefit of having great conversations with amazing people is that we occasionally get introduced to other amazing people. Amazing people tend to hang out with other amazing people. And so that's exactly what this conversation is the byproduct of. Had a great conversation many seasons ago with a good friend of mine, Mr. Stephen Burkhart. And afterwards he said, okay, there's one person you absolutely have to talk with. And that is Dr. Angela Prestia. And I've got her here. Dr. Angela, how you doing?
I am doing so well, and it's such a pleasure to meet you, Galen, and to be invited to speak on this podcast. And I just adore Stephen Burkhart, and I'm glad that we both are friends of his.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to get into this conversation because you have expertise in an area that I am increasing in my fondness of. So it's going to be amazing to speak with a bona fide expert. But first, the first question I got to ask, and this might be the most important question, and that is, so what you drinking?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I am a white wine kind of girl. And so I have a glass of Santa Margherita Pinot Grigio with me tonight. I like Pinot Grigio because it's a little bit of a bite, a little bit not as smooth as a Chardonnay. And Santa Margherita is an Italian product, and I have to pay homage to my roots.
Fantastic. Well, that's a good call. That's a good reason. I like it. I like it. Well, one of the things that I have learned about you is that you're also kind of interested in Scotch.
I I am a little interested in Scotch. Yeah. And should I tell you why?
Please do tell me why.
So I had the opportunity to host a dinner party for a good friend of mine and his extended family from Ireland. And so I was preparing all kinds of foods, and then went to the liquor cabinet. I was like, okay, what do I have? And I put out all the liquor I had because you never know what people are interested in. So his oldest brother was so excited to see this bottle of Glenlivet Scotch whiskey. It was unopened. And I said, oh, please, that's what it's there for. Please open it. Well, I was mortified because the cork kind of crumbled into the whiskey. And I was a little embarrassed, but this older brother of my friend was just so gracious. And he said, do you have a strainer? I knew that this whiskey had to be something just so desirable because he spoke to the whiskey like it was a child, lovingly. And he was like, we're going to strain you. And then he was coaxing out the little pieces of the cork. And he just spoke to it so lovingly, and then enjoyed the whiskey that night. And they were going to be in town for a while. So what I did after everybody left and the next day was I continued to strain the whiskey, speaking to it lovingly, and put it in a clean container and took it to him and gifted it to him for the remainder of his trip. So I knew that it had to be a really good whiskey.
Well, hey, that sounds like a true whiskey head. I mean, if you're going to take that kind of care for some Glenlivet, and I get it. I don't have a whole lot of Scotch. I've got maybe 4 or 5 Scotches But for this conversation, I decided to break out a scotch that was gifted by another guest. Going back to Mr. Patrick Hunter, after the conversation, he showed up at my door and he had a bottle of Glenfiddich 21-year Grand Reserve that's been finished in some rum cash, and I was like, oh, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So that's what I'm gonna jump in to. So it comes in this box, and you gotta like move this thing down, but let's see, it comes in this little box here that you have to navigate. It's incredibly fancy. So I'm gonna open this up. All right, we got just a little bit going there. And this, like I said, this is finished in a rum cast, but it is absolutely delightful. It's drinkable. It is got some notes of dried fruit, and a lot of times Scotch will have like this burn at the end. This does not have that burn, so I'm going to enjoy this. As I jump into this, talk a little bit more about your background and how you go from being in the heart of practice, nursing, to now you're a speaker, you're a professor, you're a lecturer, you've seen both ends of this. So talk a little bit about where did you begin, and is this the life that you described when you set out to do this thing professionally?
So I could never have imagined in my wildest dreams that I would be where I am today, having received some recent awards, but able to look back on a career of service. When I was 16, 17 years old, probably back in the day, women could be a couple of things. They could be teachers, they could be nurses, or they could be homemakers, if you will. I'm talking the early 70s. And so my mother, who was an advocate at the time for education, said, Angela, you're pretty good at science. Why don't you become a nurse? And that was it. That was the extent of the career planning. I think I might have said, well, Mom, maybe I want to be a doctor. And she's like, we don't have the money for that. So you know what? We'll put you through nursing school. And then if you want to be a physician, then you can pay your own way. Well, I fell in love with nursing and I never looked back. I started at the bedside caring for patients and had an affinity towards the little ones. I spent a lot of my clinical career with newborns and newborn intensive care and mother baby care. And back then I had this thought after an 8-hour shift, because they were 8-hour shifts back then, now mostly 12, I was tired, physically tired, and I was a young person. And I said, there's got to be more than this. There's got to be more than getting home at 1 o'clock in the morning, and repeating it and doing it all over again. Although it was very satisfying, it was physically tiring. So I set out to explore, what is this bachelor's degree? What is this master's degree? And with the encouragement of my parents, I continued my education. And I will tell you, Galen, that I am still continuing on my education. I believe in lifelong learning. It's such a journey. I learn every single day. When you are at the bedside or a clinician, as we say, you have maybe 6, 8, 10 patients that you are responsible for. And as you move along in leadership, you become a charge nurse, which is responsible for just that shift. And then you become a nurse manager, which is a responsibility for all those nurses and all those patients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then as a director, you have more units reporting to you. And as a chief nurse, now you have the whole hospital reporting to you and all the employees and all the patients. And so with each level, there were different challenges and different rewards. And then I began to think a little bit about retirement and what is this internet thing? So this was prior to the COVID pandemic where everybody went online and to Zoom. And I was like, hey, I could be on vacation, maybe in the Colorado mountains and be teaching. So that, along with the desire to know as much about my profession as possible and obtaining a PhD, I went back to school and it took me 5 years because I was working full time. And I went to school part time and I graduated with a PhD in nursing. And so now here I am.
Wow. I mean, and that is not only is that a fascinating story, but I really like how every step that you've taken built off of the previous step. And I don't know. Well, so I'll just ask: did you anticipate that it would be this stepping stone, or did you go into it thinking, well, this is it, right? I've become a nurse. I've gotten the certification, got the education. I'm going to be a nurse, and then after doing that, you decide, well, I'll just manage the nurses on my shift, right? Did you anticipate the stair step, or did you just get locked into, I'm just going to do this thing and let opportunities come as they may?
I never anticipated it and I can't take credit for it. I would tell you that people saw something in me
Mm.
and they said, well, you can do this. And I was like, me? Really? Yeah, we see this quality in you. We see this leadership characteristic in you. Why don't you try it? And so I am very fortunate to stand on the shoulders of many mentors and nurse leaders that have come before me, that are still in my life. They helped guide me along this journey.
Hmm. Wow, just the power of networking and developing sponsorships. We are absolutely going to have to get into this idea of what does it take to nurture and develop sponsorships. But before we do, though, I would love for you to, from your perspective, decode the meaning of the title of the show, right? So, whiskey, jazz, and leadership. For me, that's the way my brain works. I talk about this all the time. That whiskey is not just the liquid, because I like the liquid, but it's about doing what you enjoy with the folks you enjoy it with. Jazz is not just about the music, although I love the music. It's about how do you um, become flexible enough, learn all you can, but become flexible enough to take advantage of opportunities as they might present themselves. As I like to say, how do you get from where you are to where you need to be, even in situations where you don't have sheet music to fall back on? And then leadership for me is an action word. At some point, we've got to stop analyzing the problem. We got to stop calculating the formula, and we've got to make a decision and get started doing something. So that's how it works out in my head. I mean, you've done so many things all over the world for all these big name organizations. How does that metaphor tie in with how you see life and success?
Galen, if I could just be one of your brain cells to come up with this metaphor, I really pondered this, and you are on to something. Let's start with the jazz, if I might. The metaphor for jazz and leadership for me is really about appreciating all of our differences, all of our perspectives, and integrating them into a beautiful piece of music. So the musicians, whatever instrument they're on, hear things differently, different rhythms, different melodies, different cadences, and they play that and riff off that. And that equals different perspectives. When you bring people to the table to solve a leadership challenge, you need to bring lots of different people, men, women, or however they identify, cultural differences, ethnic differences, physical capability differences when you're trying to design healthcare, and bring them all to the table. And each one is their own jazz musician, and their perspectives are different. And so it is through listening that the leader can help guide and co-create the solution to the difficult challenges that we have. So that's the beauty of jazz for me, embracing everyone's differing perspectives.
Mm.
The whiskey analogy, when I think about whiskey and I think about leadership, I think it's about the appreciation of sipping a fine quality whiskey. And so to me, that equates to the leader, again, taking time, listening, appreciating, and helping people create an experience, whether it's for the patient or for the staff that you serve, creating this experience that we all can benefit from.
I love it. Talk more about. I've never really thought about it this way, but you just said that the leader's job is to create the experience, and I've gone as far as to say that everyone shows up to work wanting to give their best, and the leader's job is to make their best possible. But I love the way you categorized it as creating the experience. Tell me more about what you mean by creating the experience.
We talk a lot in nursing about healthy work environments. And what does that mean? It means many different things, but specifically for leaders, it's about creating a psychologically safe space so that everybody's views can be heard, listened to, appreciated without things like eye rolling or comments like, and you've been in meetings, I'm sure, just as I have been, with leaders who will say, well, that's the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard. And that's not creating this psychologically safe space. So whether the experience is identifying an appropriate time to meet, providing food if it's over lunch so that everybody's, satisfied and got a lot of blood glucose going on in nurse terms, but actually setting some ground rules for the meeting. And it's the leader's job to set those ground rules to say, this is how we're going to conduct ourselves. Everybody's opinions count. Everybody's perspectives are important. We're going to put all the ideas up on the board, the Post-its, whatever. And nothing is too small or too irrelevant to consider.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, just in listening to you describe that situation, I felt taken care of by that leader that you just described. And, you mentioned psychological safety. I don't know that people feel, how would you assess the psychological safety in organizations today? Do you sense that leaders are creating that psychological safety, or are they more focused on creating more widgets, getting more people through the beds, and the more tangible elements of their work?
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think sometimes leaders may forget why they are leaders. In nursing, we always bring them back to the patient, what's in the best interest of the patient. And for nurse leaders, it's also about what's in the best interest for your staff. And often there are outside forces, and I've written about this. Sometimes we're in situations as leaders where we know the right thing to do, and our supervisors or constraints of the organization prevent us from doing what we know is right, which creates some types of moral distress. So a lot of my work has been in educating to what I had spoken about, creating these psychologically safe spaces, remembering what you're there for. And it can be difficult sometimes because you're under pressure, you have metrics, you have deadlines, we want it yesterday. And so sometimes we forget And so we have to be reminded. And it takes a special kind of leader to do that, I believe.
Yeah. I want to just share just a little, talk a little bit about your background because you've got all the credentials. Um, you've got all the names, 48-year career, trying to become the top of the industry that you're in. You spent 16 of those years as chief nursing officer. So don't know in that industry, don't know if you can get any higher than the chief of whatever industry that you're in. So you're a chief nursing officer for 16 years. You've got names on your educational background, such as Case Western Reserve, Vanderbilt, Florida Atlantic University. You're part of the Alumni Hall of Fame, which is an award an honor that they give to only 2 alumni a year. So it's not like they're letting 25 of y'all in at once. Past president of the Association of Leadership in Science and Nursing. So you've like checked all of the boxes. What's something as you look back that you would say paid the highest dividend on your ability to lead now? Is it your education? Was it your time as a nurse? Was it one of your leadership moments? And I'll tell you what prompted this question. If you go back to my conversation with Dave Peacock, former CEO of Anheuser-Busch, and last check, he's leading Advantage Solutions. So he's just doing amazing things. One of the things that he talked about is very often we're so quick and so eager to climb the ladder. Look back over your career, and there are moments that you might want to have back. Because they taught you so much. Is there a particular point in your career where you said, you know what? I took a couple more steps after this, but man, when I was in this role, I really learned a lot that I pull on today.
Yes. Yes, there is a seminal situation that really takes me back to a not so good place, but a place where I learned so much. And I think that we as leaders have to honestly share our stories, share those seminal moments where we weren't feeling good. Something negative may have happened to us. But we need now to share that with those that come after us, honestly, and say, this was the situation. I love storytelling and there is certainly an art and a science to storytelling. But if you think back when you were a child, not only are stories entertaining, but stories serve a purpose, right? Sharing cultural things, sharing meaning, sharing value. I was reading my young grandson the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears last night, and I was like, we don't go into people's homes and just, start eating their oatmeal. So, stories teach us certain things. I think as we progress up the leadership hierarchy, we become fearful to share those stories because we become vulnerable then. But that's just the time that you have to share that story. This is what happened to me, and this is how it made me feel. And this is what I did. And in retrospect, maybe I should have done something else.
Yo, that was just part 1. Subscribe now so you get part 2 as soon as it is released. Or better, become a VIP so you don't have to wait. Cheers.